Hey everybody, I'm your host, John Myers, live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey everybody. Gotta have my notes. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked Studios. Gotta have my notes. Alternator. Hey everybody. We have fun. Hey everybody. Hit like and subscribe. Right here, right now. It's John Myers. We like to give stuff away. Alternator. Post some more pictures. We got to thank Steve and Becky live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. Don't forget Texas Roadhouse right here, right now. Hey everybody. Don't forget right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey everybody. Had a great dinner tonight. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. Had a great dinner tonight. So, hey everybody. So, housekeeping. Had a great dinner tonight. So, alternator. Housekeeping. Housekeeping. 7:30 on Tuesday night. Housekeeping. From the Kicker UnMasked Studios. Housekeeping. Right here, right now. Hey everybody. So, it's John Myers. Hey everybody. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked Studios. Hey everybody. From the Kicker UnMasked Studios. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey everybody. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey everybody. Right here. Hey everybody, it is Tuesday night, 7:30, right here in Central America, coming to you from the UnMasked Studios right here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. We've got a great show tonight, and of course, I've got a great crew behind me, and the funny thing is, they're all behind me. I got no one in front of me anymore. We're actually down one person, but we got Bill, we got JW, and we got Ernie back there. Tim is doing something called the Bronco Project, which I think you guys have been watching a little bit, so... We had a great show last week. We talked about tuning on amplifiers, the do's and don'ts, and yes, still, as we always say, the gain is not a volume control. Do not forget that. So stay tuned. Right after this, we're going to have Christopher Pate from MTI. We're going to talk about sound staging, setup, speaker choice, and all the stuff that goes along with it to make sure you get the best sound possible. So come right back right after this message, and we'll start in with Chris and have some fun.
It's been a long road since the original Kicker christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machines became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is Kicker.
And we are back. Hey, before we bring on Chris, we want to remind everyone, in case you guys are new to the show, which I know you guys have been here with us almost every week for the past, going on 2 years. I cannot believe it's almost 2 years, Ernie. Can you believe that? We always like to give stuff away, and tonight is no exception. So if you want to go ahead and pull up my laptop, Ernie, if you guys go ahead and log into kicker.com/umweekly, this is where you can register to win tonight's prizes. And those of you that have seen this before, you can probably recite it right along with me. The third place winner, their prizes are going to be the EB400, the water-resistant Bluetooth earbuds, a gray Kicker Unmasked t-shirt, a Kicker koozie. Second place is going to get the Tabor headphones, which are a Bluetooth headphone. You'll also get the gray t-shirt and a Kicker koozie. And the grand prize, should be no surprise here, you're going to get the Cush NCs, the noise-canceling headphones. And I just ordered me 2 more pair of those because I know we're going to run out of those thanks to the stupid chip shortage thing. So I got myself a good little backup in case someone walks off with mine like they seem to like to do from my desk. But make sure you guys register to win tonight's prizes and tune in to the end of the show because we will give these away at the end of the show. And do not forget to register for the Term Pro giveaway. This is going to be a great speaker box building software program, courtesy of the one and the only Wayne Harris we had on here a couple weeks ago. Wayne is awesome, and the fact he's giving away one of these programs is going to be really, really cool, and it's a great program. We use it here in the Kicker facility all the time. Actually, there's many of us that use it, so it's a great program. So make sure you guys register to win that program. We'll be giving that away next week. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Let's bring on the one and only, the founder of Mobile Toys Incorporated, otherwise known as MTI, Christopher Pate. Christopher, how you doing tonight?
Oh, SEMA crunch in full effect. So hands smell like a little bit like a mixture of gasoline and filler. So yeah, it's a good night so far.
Well, how does gasoline and filler mix?
Oh, well, when you decide to take one of your square body trucks to lunch with one of your guys and forget the gas gauge doesn't work, and you're running out of gas, you have to put gas back in it to get it back home.
I'd like to say that it's never happened to me, but it has. But when you said filler, I was thinking, like Bondo or something in gas. But that's a whole different kind of filler.
Yeah, well, it that too. So.
Well, yeah. It's a natural assumption, doing what you do, with all those cool panels and everything that you'd be working with body filler. It's just, yeah, gas would have been a weird mixture with that. So you guys do some pretty incredible things there, and I think everyone's kind of waiting to, hear what, you've got to say about, basically setting up a vehicle for sound quality. I mean, obviously, Kicker, we've been known for, great bass since 1973. Next year will be 50 years that Steve's been doing this, which is incredible. I've only been here for 26, so I'm kind of like the new guy on the block. But yeah, it's 50 years. That's just even hard to think about. But we started with bass. We actually started doing separates in 1986, where we introduced separate woofers, mid-ranges, and tweeters, and the world has come a long way since then. It's crazy, the technology that's out there. So why don't we jump right in and where do you want to start with this? I mean, there is so many different angles we can attack this from. I'm going to let you pick one and go, and let's just see where we end up with it.
So, at the end of the day, we get a lot of questions about, obviously we build a bunch of A-pillars, and we do a lot of sound quality cars. We're probably one of the few shops that still builds a bunch of them. Speaker placement, that's probably key. And when you're building a system up front, it's understanding, what speakers you're using and where you're going to place them. Understanding what is that speaker going to shine while doing, by looking at its response curve. Does that speaker want to be on axis, off axis? Do you do a pillar firing straight across the dash? Do a pillar that's more angled in, that's more facing the driver or more towards the center of the vehicle? There's tons of different applications where you can put speakers. You can put speakers at factory locations. Shoot, I just heard a Toyota built by my buddy Jeff Smith, to new Toyota Avalon, and had unbelievable good sound as a sound quality vehicle, and everything was in the stock locations. There's lots of things to take in, when considering what is the best locations for the drivers you're using, and what are the trade-offs, what are the things you're willing to give up to accomplish the goal. So I think speaker placement and understanding drivers, I think is where we should start. So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty crucial, and you actually answered one of my questions already about stock locations. Are they always bad, or are they always good, or I think it really depends on the vehicle.
Yeah, and it really does. At the end of the day, the misconception is all stock locations are bad. Well, I'm going to tell you guys right now, there are these really big companies, they're called auto manufacturers, and they employ an insane amount of engineering know-how, and they employ a bunch of really, really kick-ass audio engineers. And now everything that those guys want doesn't always end up in there, but I can promise you a lot of the stuff they do does work. And given better drivers, better power, and a little bit of tuning to maybe get rid of some of the stuff that maybe those auto manufacturers decided to cheap out on, you'd be surprised how well some of the factory locations do actually work. I mean, there are a lot of good sounding vehicles I've heard, especially here recently, that their speakers are in stock locations with almost no modifications done other than a really solid mounting baffle and some sound dampener. So,
that's what makes it fun, is the fact that you can get a really good sounding system still using some of those stock locations. And you're right, some of these newer vehicles, I'm working on a car in back right now for one of our reps. It's a 22 Chrysler 300. And just the 3.5 location of the dash, the 6x9s in the doors, and some good DSP processing, you get some pretty amazing sound with a simple system. But we don't want to talk simple. We want to talk cool and exciting, and what people can do with creativity. I mean, that's why we're here, because just bolting a speaker in the stock location is great, but we want to talk about, if you really want to go that extra mile, you really, really want to do something cool to set your system off from, say, just a stock speaker, upgrade. What are the big things do we need to think about? I mean, obviously, location and, some of the do's and don'ts. I mean, I'll be honest, and this is just my opinion, and, I'm full of opinions, and I can tell you why, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're right or wrong, but I hate console speakers, and I hate tweeters on headliners, on visors. That used to be the big thing. Putting tweeters up on the visors or clear at the top of the pillar, it breaks your sound up so much. But when it comes to doing a really high-end system, I mean, ideally, if you have a separate tweeter or a separate mid, how close do you want those together, or is it even important with DSP?
I mean, it is important, and obviously there are a lot of things that can be corrected with DSP, but the closer you get the mid to the tweeter, getting them, on the same plane, it does alleviate problems. It doesn't make it perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you do start alleviating problems by getting speakers on the same plane, on the same angle, as close as you can together. And like I said, it's not the holy grail, but it definitely, and it doesn't mean that a speaker angled up towards the glass and one angled in won't work. But if you can get them together, it definitely makes tuning easier. It makes it easier to get a consistent soundstage. So, a lot of the trucks and stuff that we do, a lot of the big builds we do, we'll do, if we're doing a pillar and a sail panel, then we'll put the mid and the tweet at the same angle and give it the same pitch. And that way, it's like they're on the same baffle at the same plane, as close as they can be together. Obviously, if we're doing them in a pillar, then we always try to keep them on they're in the same housing. So it's our pillar pod. Right. So they get the same angle, same pitch, same baffle. And it really depends on how well the drivers work on axis versus off axis. The beauty of most car speakers is they were designed to run off axis from the word go. They're not, there are some high-end home speakers or car speakers out there that are really just high-end home speakers that have been converted. But most car speakers, true car speakers, are actually designed to run off axis and have great off axis response curves. So,
and you're right, that is really important, because it's so different, when you're sitting in a vehicle, since you're not centered, the off axis response between the two drivers actually gets pretty critical, because if they're really, really different on axis and off axis, you're going to get a completely different sound stage, unless you do some really creativity angling. And I think we talked about that before. I think you were mentioning something about some rings that Brian has.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely ways to take, to create those angles, even using stock locations. So, like, for instance, At Mobile Solutions, we use the animal to create, on our speaker baffles, we'll actually take the speaker baffles and give them a 5 to 7 degree angle just to get the pitch up to where they're not firing into your feet or firing to your knee. Or if like they were in the dash and you were doing a set of mid or wide banders in your dash or mid tweet in your dash, you give that an angle so it's a little bit, so instead of firing straight into the glass, it gives it like a little angle towards the listener. These are all things that can help create a better sound stage and make it easier to tune. So.
And you brought up, and I apologize, we're probably going to jump all over the place because, as
Yeah,
you
it's all
start
good.
talking about stuff, I something else jumps into my mind, and you talked about, bouncing things off the glass. I remember, back in the day, everybody said, oh, you can't fire, speakers into the glass, it'll never work, it's going to be really harsh, and it's going to break it up, is that so much the case anymore? I mean, obviously, putting something in the pillars and then aiming it is ideal, but, what about the people that just want to put something in the dash firing up?
Depending on the driver, it can totally work. And I'll notate two very, very smart guys who have kind of shown that and proven that, Andy Waymeyer and Scott Mawalda. I've seen them take mid-range drivers and fire them straight up into the windshield. And even Mark Eldridge, I've seen him do some similar things where you work with the reflections, don't try to fight them. So it all depends on how much, what you're trying to achieve and what drivers you're working with and how well they'll, you can make it work. So, so it can be done. Everyone, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, I guess is a good way to put that, or cook a steak. So, there are ways that can be pulled off, and definitely if you want to fire something up into the glass, it can be done. It just takes the correct setup and the correct tuning. So,
right. I think you probably, at least in my opinion, you probably want something that was less beaming, something that had a little wider dispersion, so it wasn't quite so critical on the angle.
You tend to see a mid-range, maybe a mid-bass up in there sometimes. I know a couple different vehicles I've worked on with Scott. He did that with some larger mid-range, mid-bass drivers, and it worked great. So,
I bet it would. I mean, I've always been a fan, get the largest speaker you can up high, to get most of that whole, audible range in there.
Yep.
I remember some of the old vans that actually had, 5 1/4 and 6-inch speakers in the dash. Some of the old Chrysler vans.
I'll throw one out here. This is a kicker guy, and I'm a huge fan. Old Corey Himmel, and
good old Corey. Yep.
Yeah, and his van. I mean, that thing was awesome, and it had, if I remember, and someone correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a minute, but since I've seen it, I know he's got it back together now. But I think it has the KCG group 6.5s firing across and one in the center, and he has the big KCG tweeters firing straight across. And he's got a center channel, if I remember correctly, firing up. And that thing always sounded fantastic.
Yeah, and if I remember right, that van actually had about 162 dB as well.
It does. They'd have to, and they would always have an issue with the no matter. I remember Nolan, who built the van. He would always tell me, he's like, "Yeah, it was such a problem that with that wall that close behind you, even with it off, just because they're moving, they move and make sounds on their own." And so it would always cause weird issues that they were always having to fight. So it was a very cool vehicle.
Well, you mentioned Nolan. I miss Nolan in this industry. Last I heard, he was out building sprint cars.
He is.
Weird departure.
Yeah, he's done that for a while. I talked to him some months back. He was still keep in touch. Dude's a badass. So
yeah, he's quite an amazing fabricator.
Yes, he is.
So back to the speaker choices and speaker placement. If someone is down to the point where they got to choose speakers and they got the choice of a 3-inch, a 4-inch, a 5 1/4 for mid-range, and not counting the tweeter yet. What do you suggest? Where do they want to gravitate? Is it larger speaker better, smaller speaker better, multiple drivers like a 3 and a 5? What do you actually think?
It depends on what. So this is where it comes into what your customer's willing to give up, and also look at the vehicle. Number one, you don't want to create this. And if you're building a big SQ vehicle and you're going to build a custom dash, we'll go over all that later. Then so be it. You want the biggest driver you can, and that's one thing. But when you're talking about a client that drives his vehicle every day or mostly every day, even, you can't have this big growth coming off the A-pillar blocking their view, and it's just not good for them to drive. And, I've heard, I see it all the time online where people are like, oh my God, you put that speaker on the A-pillar, it's going to fly across the crash. I was like, guys, if they're done correctly, that never happens. I mean, it's
Exactly.
that's not how a curtain airbag works. Watch some videos. But at the end of the day, you still don't want this massive speaker up there. Usually a 3-inch, to 3 to 4-inch driver for a mid-range, and a 1-inch tweeter work great up in an A-pillar. They fit real nice. You can tuck them in nice and tight. That way, you can get them as far to the left and right as you want, because that's really important. It's getting them as far left and the right to create that width in your soundstage. And so the bigger driver you get, you tend to have to push them inside the A-pillar at that point because they're such a bigger driver. So, something that's smaller with a nice neo-magnet structure that they can really tuck in there is, in my opinion, really important. So,
and another question that has always been brought up to me, which is better, a separate, like a separate 3-inch and tweeter, or a coax. There are people that say, hey, if you got a coax, the mid-range is being blocked by the tweeter, it's going to have some refraction and color the sound. I mean, what do you think there? What's your advice for the listeners?
If it's a nice high-end point source coaxial driver, which a point source really isn't a coax at that point, but if it's a driver like that, then you'd be hard pressed to not want to go with it, because then your mid, your tweeter, the voice coils are aligned at that point, or at least as close as they can be. And I know there's a great home speaker company called Kef that would probably disagree with all of us and tell us that's the only way to go. And they make some phenomenal sounding speakers.
And they do have the patent on the coincident source, by the way.
They do, and they invented it. And I will tell you this, they work very, very, very well. And it makes sense because now your mid and your tweeter are obviously, basically joined. Now, the one thing you got to watch, and I know this, it's hard to get a really large tweeter into a 3.5-inch mid, and 3-inch mid. I've been a part of one of those projects, and it works. It just takes some effort, but I can tell you it isn't a no. But if you're going to use something that's like that up in a pillar, I would go with something that's a coincident driver or a point source driver. So not a coax. It doesn't mean you can't do a coax. It doesn't mean you can't. You just got to allow for the problems if you're going to do it.
And there is no right or wrong. It's whatever you like the sound of. I mean, I always tell people, that, hey, especially a sales guy that worked for me, and he was like, we got to set everything up with an RTA so everything's flat going out the door. And I'm like, no, we don't want to do that. Put the customer in the car, tune it. When he likes it, you're done. I don't care if you hate it or not. You're not paying for it and you don't have to listen to it. So it's kind of all personal choice. So if you got something that we're saying, hey, may not be the best, but you love it and you like it, hey, that's all good too.
Yeah, and we tune to it. We have our house curve. We have our sound that we go for here. But you always put the client in the vehicle. If they're here, you always put the client in the vehicle, and you have to be willing to make adjustments, because I'm going to be super upfront. Listening to music is a personal choice, and everybody's ears are shaped differently, and everybody hears things a little differently. And I've been in some cars where clients were like, man, I really need more topping, and I'm going, dear Lord, I mean, it is bright. Like, I get it. Maybe you were
They're probably old like me.
Maybe you were into MB Quart or Boston back in the day. I don't know, but
oh, that's funny.
I mean, so anyways, but that's just it. I mean, and especially a lot of us who have listened to rock and roll, a lot of metal over the years. I mean, look, if you're a guy, you don't hear above 16K anymore. I don't care. You can try to sell me on it. You probably don't hear above 14K anymore, really.
Well, I think I said last week that I don't hear above 14. I know that for a fact. So, look at these curves flat out to 20. It's like, that might be good for, harmonics, but I can't hear that.
No, you might sense it or feel it on your skin or something like that. It gives you the sensations, but you're not hearing that anymore. I mean, I still play in a rock band to this day, and I use in-ear monitors and try to be as safe as humanly possible. And I feel like I have great hearing for someone who's done as many silly things as I've done. And I'll still tell you, I can't hear. I don't think I can grow at 16, 17K at this point. So you're not hearing all the way up to 20K. So, so.
I think that was always a generalization to make it easy for people to remember. 20 to 20K. It's like, no, that ain't realistic, but it makes it nice and easy to remember. What about open back mids versus sealed back mids, or putting an open back mid in a chamber, or just letting it play infinite baffle? What are your thoughts there?
It really depends on the driver. So some drivers absolutely want to be in a sealed enclosure, and if the teal smalls and the driver design make that a priority, then you're going to get the best response by doing that. Some drivers are designed to be in a larger cabinet, and most car drivers these days are designed to be in a larger cabinet. Some of the higher end speakers that are based off home design, or are in fact home speakers that have been rebadged, they tend to want to be in cabinets, and they're pretty strict about the cabinets they want to be in. And if you don't get it close or get it right, they don't see the right, they don't have the right air suspension behind them, they don't act right. They don't have the correct frequency response. But most car speakers are designed to be inside a big cabinet, basically a leaky cabinet like a door.
Exactly.
And or the dash of your car. So that's, it can be particular depending on the driver. But if it's a car driver, if it's a true automotive speaker, then it's generally not that particular. They want to see a big cabinet. So
it's just like woofers. You really need to pay attention to the manufacturer's specifications. And it's like, for our marine woofers, we have an infinite baffle and we have a sealed imported version. I mean, they're for very different applications. And if you don't follow the manufacturer's recommend, application, you're not going to get the best results. It may be okay, but maybe not, what you were looking for.
Yeah, and like in really a lot of I would say most of my big SQ builds, especially when I'm doing a custom dash, I'm almost always, my front stage is IB. It's vented to the outside of the car. For me, it works. The drivers I tend to use, they tend to work really good that way, and most high-end speakers will pull that off very well. You run an IB and you're venting to the outside of the car. It's also a great way to hear your music when you're outside and your doors are closed too. If you just put an IB to the outside, it works pretty good. So,
now give me an example of that, and for everybody out there, what you're talking about, with infinite baffle, where you can hear it outside.
So, of course, when you do this, you have to be careful. Number one, you don't want to cut up any part of your car that's going to cause structural integrity to be lost. So let's be upfront with that right now. But there are unibody channels in cars. There are places where where sheet metal can be removed to allow to put to build an IB. And what an IB is basically you have a driver on a baffle, and basically to create an IB, the front wave off that driver never needs to meet the back wave off that driver. So generally, the great way to do that if you're firing into a car is to create a baffle structure with an opening hopefully as large as the speaker is behind it, venting to the outside. So that means if you're doing a 6-inch driver, probably need to get as close as you can to a 6-inch hole, in area behind it, so it can vent back behind it. So that back wave goes the other way, the front wave comes towards you, they never meet, and the driver works really well. A couple of things it does, obviously, IB does increase efficiency of the driver. Usually requires less power, like 99.9% of the time will require less power. You can put a bunch of power on it, but you don't have to. So,
and it may not like it.
It may not like it if you put a lot of power on it, because it can't handle it anymore, because it doesn't have that air suspension from a sealed cabinet or the air suspension it was designed for. So yeah, I mean, IB is a great way to go. You just, like I tell everybody, before you start cutting on your car, check and see what you have going on in there. Before you just cut things up. I don't recommend cutting up anything in any car and not making it safe at all. I mean, car has to be structurally sound. So,
yeah, I definitely agree there. In fact, a lot of the older cars that I've worked on, talking, the late 60s, putting the speakers down in the fresh air returns, the guys that are putting in the aftermarket, like the vintage air and the old air products, which is great, but, you definitely get a lot of sound coming out of the vents down by the front of the windshield, but you also got to make sure that you seal those off from the elements so that the water doesn't run down off, because that's one of the problems with doing that.
Great way to ruin a pair of speakers is water.
Yeah, then of course you get those wonderful foam baffles and all that fun stuff, and
they don't really work that well. So
no, So just that's one thing to consider. Hey, sound quality is one thing, but durability. That's one of the reasons why speakers are designed for different applications. Marine speakers, power sports, car speakers, and even home speakers. They're all designed for a specific environment, and you really need to take that in consideration to make sure that, hey, once you get that good sound, it stays there for a while.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how bad a few rainy months will tear up your speakers and make them sound pretty terrible. So,
yeah, especially paper cones, and if you get things rusting. Like generally, the pole pieces on speakers are iron, and iron tends to rust when it gets wet. So, unless it's got some type of sealed.
I pulled out my fair share of rusty speakers before. So.
Yeah, I've actually had speakers I've pulled out, crossovers too. I mean, you put in crossovers in doors. I've pulled crossovers out of doors, and the screws are all rusted off. And it's just like, guys, you got to think about this stuff. It's cool to just be quick and easy and jam it in there, but think a little ahead, a little preparation.
Absolutely.
A couple of other subjects we skated on, and we talked about power. When it comes to powering speakers, do you recommend separate channels for every speaker, passive crossovers? What are the pros and cons either way, the do's and the don'ts?
Look, so I was really, with my age, I was on the fringe of the old school and really more new school. I'm very much, a channel for every driver. Give me processing on every channel. Give me as much power as I can get on my drivers. I'm very much known for doubling or tripling power on your drivers. And
no wonder we like each other and get along.
If you're going to play it loud, you got to have power. And let's be straight right up front. A tweeter, I don't care if you put a 300 watt per channel amp on it. It will never see that because it doesn't play the bandwidth to pull that power out of the amplifier. It never happens. So It's like if the tweeter sees 50 watts. Andy Waymeyer told everybody that very well. It was actually quite comical because people would give us a hard time for doing it. And I'm like, man, I was like, I'll mono out a 900 watt amp on a tweeter. It's never going to see that power, but it has a bunch of control and allows you to do things, especially if you're going to play music loud. I mean, and it still doesn't mean you cannot be responsible. You have to be responsible when setting it up. But, at the end of the day, a channel for channel processing and a channel of amplification for every driver is my go-to method. So doesn't mean you can't do it with passives. I know back in the day, Nick Wingate would tell me, man, they do some cool stuff with passives. Him and Del Fontenot and I came up learning from Wilson Adcock, and Wilson made me build a crossover one time in the shop, and I get it, but these days we have processors and we can do this. So we do not have to use passives. So,
I think, the guy behind me back here, Ernie, said it best. And, I always quote him on this, and he probably wasn't aware I was going to say this, but Ernie put it very, very bluntly one time, and this was many years ago. He said there's two ways to get a great image and stage, a wicked install or a wicked processor, or a combination of the two. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I've built a bunch of custom dash vehicles and a bunch of sound quality vehicles over the years, and sometimes it works. I mean, almost every one that we've ever done has worked because of testing. But I've been in a lot of vehicles that had custom dashes that should have never used them because it wasn't done right. And he's right. I mean, you have to nail the install, or you better have really good processing.
And that's the advantage of experience, knowing what you can and can't do and what you can get away with. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this kind of stuff to, help these people out there. It's like, hey, soak up from our knowledge. I'll tell everybody, if you can do it wrong, I've done it wrong more than once. Sometimes two or three times because I was stubborn and figured I could make it work that time. But probably not.
Yeah, I can tell everybody, it's like, I was like, I really don't at all claim to know it all. I just can tell you that we've done it about 1,000 times. And I can tell you which ways worked well and which ways didn't work well, and which ways sounded good and which ways didn't sound good. What you want to do with it from that point, or whether you think we know what we're talking about or not, that's up to you to decide, not for me. But, at the end of the day, learn from the mistakes that we tell you and take the knowledge and make it yours. And don't just take my word for it. Hop in a car and do some testing, do some listening, see what sounds good with the speakers that you're using, get a reference at home. God bless, get a decent set of headphones, and get a nice little set of monitors at home and listen to some music and go back and forth.
Yep.
That's that's what Wilson and Nick taught me over the years, was that's how you get a reference. You get a decent set of home speakers and you go back and forth, because that's what you're trying to do. So
I remember working with Mark Eldridge on his Forerunner. He had a set of the Generacs, monitors, and would constantly go sit in the office, listen, and then run out and jump in the Forerunner, and then go back and listen, and just, it was painstaking, but hey, the results were, absolutely dead on. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah.
Here's one of the things I'm going to say about, Mark's Forerunner, and I remember going to a competition one time with Mark, and I don't think I was as angry with a judge as I've ever been with this one particular judge, and I'm not going to mention any names, but the two judges get out of the vehicle, and they yell across Mark's vehicle, which obviously you're not supposed to discuss the vehicle outside the car, especially right after judging. But the one judge said, "I've heard this vehicle do things I've never heard another vehicle do in my life. I hate it." And my mind's thinking, well, how do you know it's not right if you've never heard it before? I mean, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. It was just one of those things that struck me kind of odd. It's like, yeah, just because you've never heard a vehicle sound like this doesn't mean it's wrong. But here it is. It's all about, the listener and the person that's really paying the bill and going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and to throw another old KCG guy, someone who everybody knows is near and dear to my heart, Mr. Gary Biggs. Gary, those guys did things in cars. A lot of what I do, especially on the front end of cars, was learned from Gary Biggs, and how I build a soundstage. And how we use, for building a custom dash or a custom dash vehicle. A lot of what I do, I learned from Gary and the Regal, and seeing how I did the Regal, and a little bit from Mark as well, because Mark, I got to help Mark on the NASCAR a little bit, and seeing how Mark built the NASCAR. And so
that's a cool car.
It is. It was a really, really cool car. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways to do things and build a creative front soundstage in a vehicle. So,
and in fact, you brought something else in my mind talking about Gary's Regal. I think probably the first time I actually heard a vehicle with a woofer up front was Gary's Regal with that 10-inch and the firewall, in place of the air conditioning unit. That just, it blew me away, having bass up front like that.
Oh yeah, that was so awesome. So I remember that. Yeah, I love that 10-inch sub up front in his vehicle. It was really, really awesome. So.
And then, of course, those two Solo X18s in the back in the later years, but that was a different story.
That, it got down. There ain't no doubt about it. So,
oh, you got to have fun, and it gets fun. And, kind of from that era, too, another car talking about power, talking about, not running too much power to speakers. I remember Rob Rice's Honda, where we had, a ZR1000, on the tweeters, the ZR1000 on the mids, the ZR1000 on the woofers. Yeah, we're talking 500 a channel, to tweeters.
If there was ever one that I was a part of that I never got to see finished, put back together, it was Rob's, because I worked for Rob for 3 years. And to be a part of taking that car apart, getting it all repainted and everything else, and then to this day, the car sits, I think, on the showroom at Car Toys Tulsa. I know Charles Stewart owns it now. And there it sits, unfinished to this very day.
Really?
And I remember
how awesome to check it out.
Yeah, I remember how awesome it used to be. The paint job on it's rad. That's on it now. It's a totally different car, but man, it was an awesome vehicle back in the day. And Gary had done a phenomenal job building it for Rob.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah.
Mark and Gary, like I said, most of what I've learned, from sound quality, is from those guys and hanging out with the competition group. We had a lot of, you got Frank Rougeau, you had Doug Winker. All these guys that,
everybody knows Doug is one of my closest friends. I talk to Doug probably every day. And I only know Frank. I've only known Frank, I guess, 2 or 3 times. I've only got to meet him. But Frank's Honda was wild. It's actually part of the reasons that I have Honda Civics. So was because of Frank's Honda. So, but I never really knew Frank real well like I know the other guys in the group. So.
He was funny. His little son, Zach, was funny. Remember, we were at one of the competitions, I think it was in Texas or somewhere, and they're going around taking drink orders. Of course, everyone's ordering, Jack and Coke or whatever they happen to drink, and got around to Zach, and he said, well, I'll just have a Coke. He said, I've been sober for 13 years now. I thought it was Just so funny, but what a cute kid. But you have to tell Doug hello for me. I've not talked to Doug in probably 10 or 15 years. I always liked that guy.
If you wanna have your mind blown, and I know y'all got some great engineers up there, you wanna have your mind blown, take a few minutes to sit down and have a conversation with Doug. That is, I mean, of course he has a doctorate in room acoustics or whatever it is at this point,
Yeah, he's
and
amazing.
he designs anechoic chambers for a living. Shoot, most of the major facilities for manufacturing, whether it's Microsoft or Apple or whoever, all over the United States, all over the world, he designed their anechoic chambers and helped coordinate them getting built for the company he works for. And I will tell you what, we get to see Doug multiple times during the year. He's just up the road in Austin, and he's one of my closest friends. And of course, we razz each other over football through college football season because he's a Longhorn and I'm an Aggie. But anyways, that's a different story. But Doug, man, we every year at Texas Heat Wave, and the only reason we probably still go to Texas Heat Wave, everyone asks why do we still go to the show? I was like, well, I go to the show to spend 4 days at Doug's house and hang out with Doug and me and him and Nick, and we'll get together with a few other SQ people, and we don't do anything but hang out and have a few tasty beverages and listen to music. Doug will pull out these massive JBL studio monitors and hook them up for everybody. And man, I took a couple of my younger guys, Jeffrey Hall, who's a big SQ guy, did really well at World Finals over in Missouri. And I told Jeffrey, I said, you're coming with me this year. And he was like, wow. I was like, it's your turn to learn some stuff, young man. And I sat him down, and he walked out after like 3 hours. He goes, I don't even know what to say. I was like, that's the smartest man I know, is that man right there. So
Now you're making me jealous.
Doug's a smart dude, man. He is a smart dude, and I got a lot of good people that I'm friends with, that have made my job a lot easier over the years. I ain't gonna lie. So,
well, the great thing is being able to soak up the knowledge from all these guys. And learn from what they know, and it makes the job easier. It makes the end product better, and like I've always said, we're not selling audio here. We're selling emotion. The better it sounds, and the more you connect with someone, the happier they're going to be, and usually the more money they spend on it. I mean, good grief, you can spend a lot of money on car audio.
Oh yeah. They're my favorite people.
One of the favorite times I was at one of our distributors, and he had a set of the Focal monitors. I mean, they were like the $180,000, a pair of speakers.
Yeah, and Utopias. So
yeah, I just sat in his listening room, and I just was mesmerized. How good it sounded. I just completely lost track of time and the world. I mean, it was so relaxing. I did not want to leave, but unfortunately, eventually you got to come back to reality.
Yep.
So, a couple other weird things. Something else we did actually. Mark and Gary were a part of this too. We did a little Cougar back in '99 that we did aperiodic membranes. There's a thing out of the past. You still do any of that, or you want to tell people what they are and what they do for you?
So an aperiodic membrane basically allows a smaller cabinet to seem like a larger cabinet to a great degree, and allows air to move back and basically create an air suspension behind the driver, while generally also keeping the elements out is really what they do. I don't think that I've put an aperiodic membrane in anything in probably over 15 years. It's been a long time since I've done one. It's one of those things where I generally just IB it, and I tell people up front, hey, if you're building a car like this, it's generally a show car anyway, so it's generally not getting wet. So, but yeah, aperiodic membranes it's still a viable way to go. You can actually either make your own. Doug showed me how to make some using mesh and
fiberglass and polyfiller.
Fiberglass filler, and or you can buy them at a lot of the online speaker parts companies. Places have them, so they still have them. You can buy them, and they work. They're a great way to go. So I know a lot of guys that swear by them. So
yeah, that was a fun little car. We actually did a 6-inch and a kick panel that fired through the fender well, like you were talking about before, through an aperiodic membrane. The 4-inch was sealed within the kick panel. Then, of course, we did the tweeter, mounted off a little bracket coming in. That was a good sounding little car, but yeah, it was definitely a, technological challenge, but pretty cool when it was all done.
Yeah, they work for sure, and it's a way to go. There's a lot, like I said, there are a lot of ways to make a car sound good. I tell everybody, don't be so narrow-minded. Try things and listen to drivers and see how they react in different situations. That's where a lot of guys fall short. You just say, well, this works, and I do agree that there's some of the stuff that we do on the production side where we go, look, we know this works, but you're dealing with one vehicle that we've already tried 50 or 60 ideas in, so we know that we've already tried that there's a difference. But when it comes to trying different vehicles, you gotta see what works in the vehicle. So there's a lot of ways to make a vehicle sound good as far as speaker placement. So
all right, which talking about speakers again, what do you think? Minimal drivers or as many drivers as you can get and properly tune them?
Less is always more. I do have one client who I love to death, but me around the bend. He's got more drivers up front than I normally like to use, but we've made it work. If you're going to use more drivers, be aware of what you're doing with them and try to keep them all in the same plane. That's less angles and things bouncing around is better, at least in my book. So you may disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't have to be right. So I just know what works for me. So
not to bring another manufacturing, but I remember back in high school selling Bose speakers. Not knocking them at all. I mean, it's a phenomenal marketing company, and they definitely have a huge following. But it was really interesting that the people that had just normal speakers that had a good image wanted sound coming from everywhere, and the people that had the Bose speakers wanted the center image. So you always wanted what you didn't have.
Yeah. What Doug used to always tell me is no highs, no lows. Must be Bose. So
yep, that's the old rhyme, and a lot of time, look at the old 901s. It was 9 4-inch mid-ranges.
Yep, absolutely.
And one of the funny stories, talking about, going to trainings, I love going to everybody's trainings. Like I said, I'd love to come out and sit with you guys, and I try to learn everything I can. I remember, early on in my audio career, sitting through a Bose training, with the 901s, and they're like, hey, they're talking about how great these 901s were. And I'm not knocking them at all, because they definitely had their place. And I actually just saw a set for sale, in the Facebook ad today, which was really weird. But going through the Bose training, they're like, well, 70% of your music is mid-range. So we have 9 4-inch mid-ranges, because that's the most important part. They said if you add up all the surface area of all those, 4-inch mid-ranges, we equivalent to like a 13-inch woofer with a, 256-ounce magnet, for, unlimited power handles. Okay, well, I can kind of see that. And then they said, and then we use a special glue on the dust caps on those 4-inch mid-range that decouples, and they become 9 soft dome tweeters. I'm like, okay, now you lost me.
So you made some 4-inch widebanders. That's what you did. Well, let's just get to it.
And that, believe it or not, that was back in the very, very early days. I'm not saying DSP, but of processing. I mean, the equalizer you had to have with those to make them sound good, because if you didn't have that little box that came with those speakers, they sounded awful. So that was kind of like the precursor to DSP, and that was all done basically just equalization to make those drivers sound good. But they were a really neat, driver. And those little 4-inch drivers, they had I think it was like a 0.8 ohm voice coil in each of those drivers, but they put them all in series.
Yep.
So it was really kind of a cool process. And, there's been a lot of, great speakers and revisions. And talking about, aligning voice coils and point source, another line of home speakers that I like that used to do that was a company called Thiel, and they're still around. And their speakers were actually, sloped so that, the voice coil and the tweeter, mid-range and woofer, they all were in exact the same plane, the distance away from you. And that's why you see a lot of the speakers that are actually curved. And, what's interesting, over the years, I've seen some arrays that are, like, 24-inch drivers in a curve. So each one's exactly the same distance away from you.
Yeah.
So definitely some cool, products out there. And there's so many different ways to achieve, the sound that, you guys are looking for. But it's just a matter of, what works and, having fun with it more than anything. I was, doing installs. I always try to do something different every time. By God, if you're paying me for custom work, you're going to get custom work. But hey,
Absolutely.
Still got to put the knowledge behind it. You got to make it look a little different. But there's some things that, hey, I tried that and it just didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the guys that are really after sound quality, and this is probably almost, in my opinion, as important as, speaker choice and speaker placements. I mean, it comes down to, source, the source you're playing it through and the source material. I mean,
Yep.
what are your thoughts there?
So, high res is the best. I mean, it used to be, some years back, I probably took a little longer to get on the digital high res train than a lot of my partners and buddies out there. I was big into, still love my Macintosh transports, and I kept an MX5000, MX4000 for a long time with the outboard DACs. But I will say this: after getting, I have two Astel & Kearns SP2000s, and they're full of music. It's all high res, and I can tell you unequivocally, nothing sounds like them that I've ever had. And having that really nice high-res source material with a really nice DAC coming out of it is the best way to start off any system. There's a lot of aftermarket head unit companies out there that have some nice high-res stuff. I know talked about another manufacturer. I know Kenwood's is pretty nice. I know Sony's is pretty darn nice as well. They make some really good high-res DAC outputs to send to aftermarket equipment. So but the better your source material, the better everything works down the line. It's just like a human. You eat a bunch of crap, you're not going to perform very well. But you eat healthy, you do things right. Of course, me sitting here drinking a Red Bull, not really the healthiest thing on the planet. So, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, better source material, it starts the system off better. You're going to get a better sounding system. So
Garbage in is garbage out.
You got it.
Yeah, and it's funny how, and I'm sure you've experienced this, obviously, being in retail, you do a system that, it's just absolutely incredible, and you put the customer in it, they absolutely love it, just completely blown away, and they leave, and a couple weeks later they come back and say, my system doesn't sound good anymore. It's like, really? What's wrong? I don't know, it just doesn't sound the way it did. Something went wrong. So you take them out to the vehicle and I say, okay, now show me what you're talking about. The first thing they pick up is this.
There's nothing wrong with using your phone. If
right.
You're going to use your phone, please don't play stuff off YouTube.
Exactly. Or
if
some of the other.
If you're going to use your phone, put it in lossless. You can do iTunes in lossless, or any other company's phone in lossless and high res, and it sounds phenomenal. It works
and
great.
I agree.
I use my iPhone 99% of the time. That's what I use. I have my Astel & Kearns, I have my iPhone, and I have more music on my iPhone than my Astel & Kearns. So at the end of the day, I probably use my iPhone way more than my Astel & Kearns, and it works great. But I have everything in lossless running high res on my iPhone. So.
Yep, I actually keep a 160 gig iPod in every one of my vehicles, and everything is either lossless or, as least compressed WAV file converted, just to make sure
Absolutely.
It sounds good. But, these people start pulling up, like you say, Pandora, they start Bluetooth and, at YouTube, but it's like, I thought we taught you well, or maybe it was my fault I didn't explain it to you. But and then you play something, it's like, oh yeah, I guess it's not, not the system after all. But people forget that it's all about the convenience, and I think it's cool that the SQ is really making a comeback, in my opinion. I mean, it obviously. It was really popular for a long time, then it kind of went away, especially car makers, it's good enough to get it out the door, it doesn't have to sound good, just as long as it doesn't take sales away from the vehicle.
Absolutely.
But, that's where, we as retailers and manufacturers have the advantage is we can, educate people and show them, hey, you can get good sound quality. And the biggest thing is if you've never heard what good sound quality is, you'll never know what you're missing. So, anybody that, has ever got a chance, go to a high-end store, home or car, doesn't matter. Listen to high res, listen to something on a good system, and see what music really sounds like versus what most people are listening to. And I would say probably in the world, more than 90 to 95% of the people probably have never heard music the way it was supposed to be heard because they're listening to it compressed somehow.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And I tell people that all the time. I was like, I ask them, someone says, hey, I'm into sound quality. I go, well, what's your reference? What do you listen to? Like, what do you listen to on the daily? Are you listening to a set of Apple AirPods running Bluetooth on, YouTube music? Well, that's not sound quality. That's a way to get through the day. So it's not the experience. And if you want the experience, you don't even have to have an expensive set of home speakers. Find a higher end home theater place or higher end home audio place in your town, and you can go in there and take a listen and get that experience without a dime spent. And usually you have an idea.
The salesmen are happy to let you listen. I mean, they're in it for fun too. I mean, we're not in this industry to be millionaires. That's for sure. We're in this industry because we love it. At least in my opinion.
Somebody is. It just ain't you or me. So.
Well, that's probably true. I've always said if you work for a living, you'll never be rich. Really, really, really wealthy people don't make any money whatsoever. They have people that do that for them. So that'll probably never be me.
Nope.
So another question popped into my mind, another subject that, hopefully, is kind of interesting. Dedicated center channel versus good two-channel processing. What are your thoughts?
Really depends on what you're trying to achieve and if the processor you're using has the correct codec or, algorithm to process that sound. A lot of processors now are starting to have the proper codec or proper processing to actually have a process center channel and actually do something with it. In years past, it was, we had a lot of processors had a center channel output, but it was doing nothing but giving you part left, part right, and sending it out, which anybody could have done before. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. I tend to find that a proper two-channel system tends to always sound bigger and more open. A dedicated center channel is great and obviously can firm up a center image from both seats, which can be awesome in a two-seat environment. It can help out that passenger's listening experience, but it does tend to bring the soundstage in because now that driver is a lot closer to you, and it tends to make your soundstage not as big. At least that's what I've found. Now that being said, I've heard some cars with center channels that really blow your mind. They had a lot of processing and were done very, very well and at a high level. And I've heard it work. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve and what you believe in. Of course, a lot of retailers will be like, hey, you should always sell center channel because, it's an extra speaker and an amplifier channel. But, at the end of the day, I'm on the other side of the fence. I generally don't do center channel speakers. So I think the only one recently we've done is for a gentleman out of Colorado. And we didn't use it in the sense of it being a center channel. The goal was to create some upfront mid bass and to firm up lower vocals in the center, and really more as a mid bass driver. When it was all said and done, we ended up turning it off because it didn't do what it was supposed to do, and he had an opening already there. It was an existing install, and we were filling an opening anyway. So we ended up for his SQ tune, we ended up shutting that driver off. It doesn't even play. So it really depends on the environment and what you're trying to achieve. So.
And I definitely agree with you. I've heard a vehicle that had a very prominent center channel, and to me, and once again, it's all personal choice and opinion. I didn't care for it because it sounded like it was everything was coming out of the center. There was, like you say, there was no width, there was no openness. It was almost like point source, and to me, it wasn't what I was looking for, as far as good, sound quality. And years ago, one of the tricks that I did in audio shop I started with, we used to do center channels in cars, and we take, this is back when amplifiers were designed a little bit differently. You could do this. Unfortunately, with the way the topography of the amplifiers are designed now, we used to take the positive off the left channel and the positive off the right channel, run it to the center speaker. That way, anything that was mono wouldn't go through the speaker, but anything that was in one channel or another would pass through it. So it was kind of a weird effect, but it wasn't a true center channel at all.
Yeah.
So
you can't do that.
I ripped my earbuds out of my ears once again. So, and the other thing I do not like, and if anyone is wondering, mono center channels where you basically take left and right, run it to the center. When you do that, I mean, if you think about it, you're sitting in the driver's seat, you've got a left on the left side of you, but since it's mono, you have a left on the right side of you too. So that's the other reason I don't like console speakers, when they run mono or even stereo, because you're still, ruining the left and right image.
Absolutely.
So it's that KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The right drivers, the right power, the right placement, good, acoustic treatment, sound dampening material, keep panels from buzzing and rattling. So, man, we've really drug this out quite a while here. I actually want to bring up some pictures that you sent me earlier. So I'm going to pull these up here in just a second. I'll have Ernie turn on the laptop because you sent some really cool pictures that I want to go through and have you tell about these systems. So Ernie, go ahead and drag up the laptop, and Chris, tell us what we got.
This is a Hyundai that our guys did. So that was actually Justin Cush and Phil Cantu with an assist from Steve Cook, who Steve Cook does not work for me. Steve Cook has his own shop. So Steve Cook actually started these pillars and sails and the kick panels in this car, and mailed them out to the guy or something, some arrangement like that. Anyways, long and short of it is, the car was sent to us to finish, and obviously we finished we did the entire trunk of the car, did the whole build, and then we finished out the kick panels and A-pillars and all that jazz. So props to Steve Cook, because he actually did all the work as far as aligning these drivers and getting them set up. And I will tell you this, they sounded phenomenal, worked great. I think the system was ARC audio on the top end, with a Dyne 9 in the kick panel. So
nice.
And they were vented to the outside, and that car had some mid bass. It jammed. So great sounding car.
And that's something that I'm really looking for in a car is good mid bass, because it seems like so many cars out there have great sub bass, great mid and highs, but the mid bass is really one of the bigger challenges, especially with bigger drivers. But I will point out, I always like to see pictures, see the things that I do like the fact that speaker grill is not round on the mid. That's very unique and very cool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think here's another picture of it. There's where you can see the mid bass down on the floor.
Absolutely, yeah.
What a great looking install, and it's almost a crime that everyone can't hear these vehicles. And here's a little wider shot of that vehicle, but very, very cool install and very unique, and that's what makes this a lot of fun. And here we've got another pillar. Tell us kind of what we have here. Obviously,
so this was in a Volkswagen. So it's a mid-tweet in a Volkswagen, and it's firing. It has about 10 degrees of angle into the center of the car, so it's not completely off. It's not completely off axis. So it's got a slight angle to the middle of the car. Makes for a great soundstage. The goal, obviously, when we do most of our pillars, is we want to get them flanked out as wide as we can without inhibiting the view of the view for the driver. Most drivers, you can do this, and it works out great, and it's easy to tune. So.
And I think I see the Fender logo on the dash there.
It was a Volkswagen. It had the Fender system factory in it. So yeah.
Now, are you utilizing the dash location there for the tweeter as well, or just
leave
that blank?
We leave that blank. The mid and the tweeter are in the A pillar.
Cool. And I love the grill on this one. I love unique designs that it just looks cool.
Yeah, and this is all Justin Cush. This was a truck. This is a big Ford Super Duty we did for a client. I remember correctly, and if I get the wrong one, I can't remember if this was for Yup Motorsports or if this was for Joe Johnson. I can't remember, but two of our biggest clients and two of the biggest Ford systems we've ever done. They're both close to both over $100,000 builds. But that's a multi-layered grill.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was Focal Utopia up front, and the whole thing actually lights up. It's all programmable LEDs, and that's a Justin Cush masterpiece right there, no doubt.
Now, I'm going to ask, just because I want to know, and some other people out there want to know as well, do you have a spot on your website where people can go and see some of these vehicles? See some more pictures of them?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to mobiletoysinc.com. You can obviously go to Mobile Toys Inc. or MTI Acoustics on Facebook. And on Instagram, you can go to at MTI Acoustics or at mobile or at MTI Automotive Designs on Instagram. So
cool, and another great looking pillar with
that's
nice
in a Chevy.
accents.
That's Edgar. Edgar is with me for 8 years, and Edgar probably has built more pillars than everybody else on the planet combined. He has built and designed most of the pillars for most of the trucks that have gone out over the last 5-6 years. So that is an Edgar. That is Edgar's masterpieces, and it's for a Chevy pickup, if I remember correctly, 2014 to 2018 model, I believe. And that has a bend and tweak in the pillar. That one does fire across the dash, not into the windshield, but it's straight across the dash. It's completely off axis. So
Just phenomenal work again. I think here's another kind of
that is another
variation.
Chevy. Yeah, different variation of that. Another Chevy one. So this is in a Mercedes. This is in a Mercedes, and this one Edgar did as well. So Edgar Diastado did this one as well. So
he's definitely got a style, doesn't he?
He does, and he is very, very talented. Me and him are actually building a truck right now together for SEMA. So he very much has a particular style. He is very, very good.
Yeah, and more than anything, just the creativity and just pointing out to some of the listeners out there and the viewers out there, like, hey, don't be afraid to do something. Try something different. It doesn't have to be round. It doesn't have to be flat. It doesn't have to be monotone. Just do something cool. Now, and I absolutely love this, by the way. This is probably one of my favorite pictures of all of them that you sent. Just the whole idea of this system. So tell us about this one, because this is really cool and a lot going on.
So this is Braxalac. This is actually Wallace Whitworth. He's out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Car we built in conjunction with Brax Helix for him. It is a 1966 or 65, I always get it wrong, Cadillac Eldorado. It was brought to us, and originally it just came in for a nice audio system and a little bit of interior updating in it. And as with a lot of these builds over time, it got that, and it snowballed out into what it is, which is a world-class sound quality vehicle. There are dual 8s in the kick panels that are vented to the outside, and there is a 6 in the tweet, and sealed cabinets to the left and right, and everything is flanked left and right. There's a 10-inch sub in the middle of the dash. The dash is almost completely transparent except for the center gauge area. It is a phenomenal sounding car. It's an awesome vehicle. All interior completely built by our team here. It was completely done in-house by our MT Automotive Designs team. A lot of great guys had a hand in that car. Matt Val worked on that car, which he's now at Avant-Garde. I obviously worked on that one a bunch. We had a lot of really good guys. Our upholsterer was Frank Nito, who is still with us. He did all the stitching you see on there. We have spent a lot of time building that car. It's a great sounding vehicle. Yeah, and one of my favorites.
Complete custom door panels as well. I mean, everything just ties together.
All the wood grain is actual wood grain that we did here in house. Everything was 3D designed and either cut on a CNC or cut on a laser. So
yeah, I really miss those tools. And there's a little shot of the dash that you sent where you can see it's acoustically transparent.
Yeah, that's the upper dash. So yeah,
which is very cool and nice stitching, and that's something I've never ever been is behind a sewing machine. So this is going to bring up some really interesting questions. I mean, not just for me, but I bet from people watching out there. This looks really, really cool, and especially this shouldn't have been the first picture I started off with, but that's the way it popped up. So tell us what's going on here.
This is what's behind that dash. So ultimately, that's what's behind the dash of that Cadillac. This
is the Cadillac.
This is the Cadillac. That's what's behind it. And that's the 6 in the tweet. The tweet's flanked out hard to the right. And we push I firmly believe get the drivers as far left and right as you can. Especially, different drivers do different things. A lot of your width cues are given to you by upper frequencies. So it makes sense to keep your tweeters flanked out left and right. Mid bass, it's got dual 8-inch mid bass drivers. There's another 8 right above the bottom 8. And so one 8 vents through the kit grill, the other 8 vents up through the dash. So that's and of course the inside of the entire dash is acoustically treated with Black Hole 5. So yeah, I mean this is the front stage of that car, and
cool.
It will rip your head off. It is awesome.
Oh, I bet.
It was designed to get down.
I'm really starting to get jealous. I'm not closer to you guys, so I can come check out some of this. Obviously, the other side mirror imaged. But I almost thought it was this vehicle at first. This is the one that's so cool and so unique, and no small amount of work in this vehicle.
So that is our Civic. It was, I guess, briefly was owned by my buddy Greg Thompson, who was kind enough to pay to have it all built the way it is now and pay us to build it. And we took it with Italia Hi-Fi speakers and won a couple of world championships for him last year. And then he said, Chris, I don't really know how to drive that darn thing. And, well, you did everything I asked you to do and won me a couple championships, so I'm just going to give it back to you. And I was like, okay.
Oh, wow.
So the car lives here. It resides on our floor. David Cruz obviously did a ton of the work in there. So did myself, and so did Justin Cush. And the car resides on our showroom floor. And, yeah, I mean, you know, me and Dan Merritt and Nick Wingate have spent many, many hours tuning that car. It is a front four-way system with a pair of 12s in the back, all true technology, custom-built Class A amplifiers with a Mosconi processor, and it's got a pair of Raven 12s in the back. It's a phenomenal sounding car. I'm actually glad I got it back. It was one of those things that I was kind of happy to see it go when I sold it, and then whenever everything happened the way it did, and we were able to work on an arrangement that worked out for both of us, and for me to have the car back and get to have it on my showroom is a pretty awesome deal for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's a phenomenal sounding car, but it's also a really beautiful interior. You know, there's a lot of history there because obviously me and Gary built the car with the paint job that everybody knows. Me and Gary Biggs built it, you know, years ago, and the first full custom dash that we did in that car. And, you know, it's pretty awesome. It's in its iteration of being what it is. It is a center drive car. She's never been defeated in a competition. And, yeah, that's a pretty proud thing for us here. We've got, I guess, 16 championships with that car alone. No, I'm sorry, 18 championships now. And it's our baby. So it's good that she stayed here. It's our girl. So, and she lives here, and she lives a very pampered life. She sits on a showroom on a battery charger all day long, and with an acetyl curtain sitting in the front control center, and you can hop in and listen to it, and it's great. So,
I love the way the floor rolls up to the seat. I mean, that's
that is David Cruz to the T, man. He really. I set up the front stage and showed him what I wanted, and I'm going to tell you right now, David Cruz, he nailed that. Any little idea I had, he just said, okay, cool. And he drew it out and he went with it. And really, I mean, that's all David right there. And I mean, I had to wrap the panels and help finish them, but I can tell you right now, David designed that whole center section of the car. I mean, he really killed it, man. And he built it. So it's awesome.
What a genius.
He is. He's very, very, very good.
Now, how do you steer this car? This is probably the big question.
The front control center there, that's basically as the center section that comes out, which is ultimately covering the steering shaft.
Gotcha.
That black control center is held on with neodymium magnets, and it comes off. And then we have another piece that goes on and it allows you to couple a steering wheel in. You can still listen to music. It just Bluetooth streams at that point. There is a hard line, an AudioQuest hardline cable, Diamond Series cable that runs up there to allow you a hardline connection to the acetyl currents for sound quality. So,
how cool. And obviously the back of the vehicle.
Yep.
Just beautiful work. And I remember years ago seeing the first center drive car I've actually ever seen was a Ford Festiva, if I remember right.
I remember them. Yep,
and
absolutely.
Memory
scored the
serves
first
me, that was,
perfect score in RTA
I was
back in the day, if I remember
just
correctly.
going there. It scored a perfect 40.
Yep, I remember that.
I remember seeing that car and sitting and going, I was like, wow. I mean, that just blew my mind. And, you know, the last two pictures we have are really kind of a very unique stylistic dash that's very modern. I absolutely love this.
So this is a Toyota Tacoma we did for a gentleman out of Galveston. Justin Cush did this build. It is phenomenal. It's a set of the Focal Ultima Utopias up front. It's a 6 and a tweet, and then there's an 8-inch mid-bass driver in the door. The 6 and the Tweet do vent to the outside. They are IB. They do. They vent through the. Basically, we cut openings into the windshield wiper cowling, so it doesn't like to get wet. I can tell you that. So, but it worked.
We won't hold that against
great. It works great as far as venting. We did retain factory AC and all the factory controls. Obviously, airbags were all completely disabled. They don't work anymore, so we did disable those. But it is a show truck. But it is a very, very interesting presentation. It was based off the Suburban that I used to have that I won 4 two-seat Export World Championships with. And that's what the design was based off of. That's what the customer wanted us to recreate, was a design based off that. All the gauges and everything are on the center tablet using an ODB2 streaming device. So, yeah, it's a very cool car. It's all Focal Ultima Utopia with all Brax amplifier and processing.
Too cool. We've definitely drug this out for a while. I mean, obviously, I would love to go on for hours and hours, but I suppose some of these guys are probably going to want to win something sooner or later. But
they do. They deserve to.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Jeremy if anyone has any questions that anyone's posted for Chris, if you want to post those up. I'm sure someone's been asking some pretty good questions because we threw out a lot of, interesting ideas and topics out there. So I know there's people out there that got to have a few questions, I would hope, as he's scrolling through. All right. Jovan Lara says, I know Q-Class subs is the way to go SQ-wise, but what about the CVX subwoofers? SQ-worthy? I'll let you answer that one because I might have kind of a biased opinion on that.
I think that you could manipulate it and make it work. First off is realizing, take a look at the driver, do some measurements, and see what it shines at doing. If it can get low and get some of those transient low notes out of it, you can get some subsonic bass. If put in the right enclosure, then yes, it can work. I haven't ever used one, so I'd be totally incorrect. Most of what we do here with Kicker is we do a ton of the Soliberic thin woofers and a ton of the thin round woofers, and we do lots of those, and then we obviously do Soliberics. So that's what we do a ton of. So I don't know a lot about that driver in that setting, but I would imagine if put in the right enclosure and ran in the right situation with the right processing, it can work.
Well, I will tell you that the Q-Class actually have a lower cone. They've got a deeper resonance, so they are a lot smoother response. Yeah. The CVX is actually a round L7S speaker. I mean, it's basically the exact same, just in a round basket. So, it's great. I'd love the CVX. I've had them in vehicles. I love my Q-Class. So I don't think I could ever own too many speakers or, audio systems, because there's always something you like better about something else. But they definitely both have, the areas. The Q-Class obviously is going to be a lot smoother, playing lower. But if you want them to have the punch like the CVX, have got a little bit more kick to them. That's what they were designed for. And just putting the Q-Class in a smaller, about a 10% smaller seal enclosure brings some of that punch back. But obviously, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of the low end response. So there is no right or wrong. It's whatever you guys like the sound of. So. Cool. And Richie Rivera asks, any advice to aiming tweeters on A-pillars for Silverado 1500? Lasers. Freaking laser beams.
Laser works great. You want to get I would go between 5 and 15 degrees of angle in towards the middle of the car. We always tell guys, a great, couple spots to try to angle your drivers depending on how on axis or off axis you want them. Either the dome light in the center of the vehicle or the rear view mirror. Depending on the placement of your A-pillars in the car in conjunction to that. So, it's a great, and then to do that, a set of laser pointers work really well. So,
and obviously it's going to depend on the drivers too.
It does depend on the drivers you're using. If they don't have great on-axis response, then you need to keep them off-axis. So,
see, this is why I hate shows that have a limited amount of time, and I'm probably just going to wear you out. But when it comes to tweeter, design and construction, soft dome, hard dome, horn, inverted dome. I mean, what are your thoughts on tweeter style for different applications?
Everybody knows I listen to metal most days, so I'm listening to hard rock. So I like my hard dome. I like my metal dome tweeters. I'm a fan. I think that some companies do them better than others, and I'll keep all that out of the picture. But
that's fine.
I think that a soft dome tweeter can work. I've heard some really great sounding Dines over the years. I've heard some great sounding Morels over the years. I remember my old kicker resolutions back when I was in high school. It was my first set of
ND25s.
my first really nice set of components. I remember I saved up the money to buy them, and I loved them. And I still have a set in my closet that I keep just for memory's sake. I also remember my first set of Oz audio I ever got. So soft dome tweeters can work. It depends on the situation, and depends on how you're going to use them. So just really depends. But for me, I like my metal dome tweeters. So.
All right, Andy wants to know, for the people in the back, I'm back here, explain off-axis and on-axis. And I'm glad you brought that up, Andy, because I was actually thinking that myself. So,
on-axis is exactly what it means. It's more facing towards you or facing towards your angle towards the listener. Off-axis is angled away from the listener. So that hopefully
the side versus right at your face.
You got it. And there are variations from one to the other, depending on the angle and the placement. So,
and Kibo types in, on component sets of speakers where factory tweeter location isn't available, I've seen people mount them in the kick panel on the floor. Is that a decent area?
As long as they're angled up towards you, yes. If they're firing into your foot, not so much. So, can it work? Look, there are different variations where you're going to it'll be okay. I can tell you right now, in a lot of classic cars, we put everything in the kick panel, and it works great. But they're not trying to achieve sound quality. They just want it to be louder than the motor when they're driving down the road, and they don't want to see the driver, and they want a cool looking interior. So there's a different situation there. I'm not trying to achieve a great soundstage. If you want to achieve a great soundstage, it may or may not work. So. Just depends.
I definitely agree with you there, and especially some of the older cars, it's very difficult to find a location everything's metal in some of those old cars.
Yeah.
Just sticking a tweeter to it, running a wire up to it doesn't work. It may work, but it just doesn't look good. And that's not what these guys are after either. So cool. El Fuego says, do you recommend overlap on crossover points? See, there's so many different areas. We could keep going for hours on this. Chris, we may have to get you back and do another show on just questions.
We could. It just depends on your situation and the tuning situation you're in. There are times where I would tell you never overlap your crossover points. And there are times where you can totally overlap your crossover points and it has some benefit. It really depends on the car and the situation. I tend to never overlap my crossover points. I tend to like a nice hard, line between them. Like 24 dB per octave slope on a Butterworth crossover alignment. So it really just depends. I will tell you, there are some people that absolutely say you have to overlap them. I don't go hard fast one way or the other, except that I just tend to always have mine butted up against each other and I don't overlap them. But I have seen times when it works and it can correct some anomalies in a vehicle. So, I'd say do some testing and see what works out in your vehicle.
And that's the big takeaway. Hey, try it. If it doesn't work, try something different, till you get the result you're looking for, because there's so many different things. And talking about overlap, I remember there was a company that strongly preached underlap, and that was, I was a big ADS dealer, and their 642 CSA crossover was 80 hertz low pass and 170 hertz high pass. So there was, a lot of underlap there, but it just worked. So cool. Yeah. Mullen Performance Audio asks, fire that center channel off the windshield or straight down the car?
So if I can tell you that you could fire it off the windshield and it will work, you're going to get a whole lot of reflections. If you could do it in such a way to fire it straight forward, I know Mark Eldridge would agree with me, fire it straight forward into the car. You'll have less reflections, you'll have less problems to deal with. And I don't know if anybody has any familiarity with what's in Mark's car, but I can tell you unequivocally, he's got a really kick-ass array in the front of that thing, and it's got a center channel. Now, it doesn't act like a center channel in the way that any of us would think it does, because it uses an array that I know that he has set up and has some help and input from Mr. Doug Winker. But I can tell you this, that if you're going to do a center channel, the best way, if you could, would be to fire it into the car straight towards you. That being said, that's not very practical in most dashes. But if you want to cut some things up and, sacrifice the center AC vents, go for it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we're getting to that point where we probably better decide to end this. Unfortunately, like I say, we could go for hours, and I'm learning as much as probably everybody else is, and just having fun talking about this and getting people's questions and just like I say, guys, if you have questions, support@kicker.com. I think definitely we want to maybe get another show, or we'll just do a complete question and answer if that's obtainable for you, Chris. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
After SEMA, y'all can have me on anytime you want. But for the next 3 weeks, I'm probably gonna be living here at the shop. So, but yeah, after SEMA, I'll come on anytime, no problem. That's
kind of why we're short a camera guy right now, because he's back there working on one ominous red Bronco. Yes, so spending all his time. So.
It'd be nice. Y'all send us some of them Solo X subs whenever you get them done.
Yeah, whenever. Yeah, it'll happen sooner or later. But Chris, thank you again for being on, and thank you for all the information. And please tell Doug I said hello. Like I said, it's been way too many years since I've talked to that guy, and I am really jealous that I'm not closer to your shop, because I'd probably be like a groupie. I'd be hanging out all the time, just seeing all the cool stuff and listening to all the cool vehicles. And then I wouldn't have a job anymore and I'd be unemployed. But that's okay. I'd be happy. So,
yeah.
Thanks again. Good luck with SEMA. I'm sure I'll see you out there. Once again, you've got 7 vehicles going out there?
We probably have stuff in over 100 vehicles from the production side. But yeah, we have, I think there's 4 huge, big lifted trucks that are 4 big systems. I know 2 that we're completing right now. One is all kicker stuff, which you guys are for Miss Justine Wolf. And then we have 5 hot rods going out there that are all in booths. So, and then 3 of those. Yeah, so and I know we have 3 hot rods that are in Battle of the Builders this year, which will probably get our rear ends kicked, but that's okay. We're going to enjoy it and have a good time with it. But yeah, so we've got a busy 3 weeks ahead of us to get these things done, wrapped up, and off to where they got to go so they can make it to Vegas. So.
Well, I know you're going to have a busy show and a great one. I'm looking forward to seeing the vehicles, looking forward to seeing you out there, and I will make this open in public. If you get a chance, some night at SEMA, if you get a spare moment, dinner's on me.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Cool. Chris, thanks for coming on, and thanks for everybody for listening. We're going to take a break, then we're going to come back, and we're going to give some stuff away. If you want to hang out for that, you're more than welcome to, Chris. But I'm
going to go back to my wood shop. You guys
I was going to say, you're going to go back to work because I know you're a dedicated guy. So thanks again for taking the time out, and thanks for everybody for tuning in so far. And we just got a little bit more to go and some stuff to give away. So thanks a lot, and we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Music is my passion, my livelihood, and it's in my DNA. My pals at Kicker Marine Audio gave me a chance to take the music, what I love and listen to, at home, on stage, and in the car, onto the water. Hi, this is Jason Bonham, and I want to say a big thank you to my friends at Kicker Audio for inspiring the songs and the stories behind the music that inspires America. Go overboard! This is your time.
Hey guys, thanks for coming back, and I hope you had as much fun as I did with that last segment. I mean, talk about a wealth of knowledge and just really cool work. You can't say enough for the knowledge and the expertise those guys have down there. And, it was really nice for Chris to join us on the show tonight. And I know you guys are excited to win some stuff, but, we got a few little things we got to do before that. I'm going to have Ernie go ahead and pull up the laptop. We need to talk about some events that are going on that you guys, obviously, SEMA's coming on. We definitely know about that. So let me close out some of these notifications before he pulls up my laptop. And all righty, so we're going to go down here to the Kicker Facebook page. We're going to click on events. And as we scroll down, we're going to skip past tonight's show, Base Wars. Obviously, got a lot of cool things going on there. We got the Super Mega Truck and Jeep show going on. Holiday Raceway, that's going to be a great show. And the 22 Okie Jeep Jam, and that's going to be at Hatbox Field. So a lot of cool things going on, and I wish we could be at every single one of these events. Unfortunately, we cannot. Here again, we've got the Enduro Cross Extreme Off-Road Racing Series, more Base Wars events going on this weekend. So, guys, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. Stick with us and, follow the page and go out and see some of the cool stuff. Some of the other really neat things that are going on, I'm going to switch gears here. Let's go ahead and pull this up. We've got something we've been actually invited to go do, and it's been kind of an honor that I actually got to be part of this. There's a TV show right now called The Ride of Your Life with Courtney Hanson. This is going to be on the Motor Trend channel, and it does feature a bunch of kicker builds. And in fact, I got some pictures of one of the cars behind the scenes, because you never really see enough of what's going on. And I will tell you guys that, you know, when you're doing these cars on the show, like here's one of the cars that's already aired. I can't show you the cars that haven't aired yet, but this is the 69 Camaro that we, you know, put a 427 in this thing and just had a lot of fun with this car. But, you know, there's a lot of time that goes into these cars, and you don't always have all the tools you want. You don't always have the supplies. You definitely don't have the time. So you do what you can, but these things have come out really cool. So if you guys get a chance, check out the Motor Trend channel. Look for The Ride of Your Life. You'll see some cool cars and some cool builds. This 69 Camaro features a TB10-inch subwoofer tucked back in the corner. You actually see the little roll bar sticking out there. As I've told you before, I'm not a big fan of flat panels, but, you know, limited time and materials. Of course, just a couple little inserts under the vinyl to give just a nice little, you know, just a little different look. So it's just not a flat rear deck. They are all custom vehicles. On this particular vehicle, we took the Bluetooth subwoofer controller, we mounted it in front of the shifter, and the guy that did all the pinstriping got carried away, and I think it actually came out kind of cool. Did a nice little pinstripe right around the base control, which is fun. This car also featured in the rear deck a set of the KSC 690s, which were the 6x9 two-way coax with a KXA 805 5-channel amplifier, and in the front, the KSS components with the little tweeter pods. We've talked about those in the past, where the tweeters actually mount on a ball and socket, so that can be aimed just about anywhere. And as I mentioned, like I say, there's a lot of things that go on in these vehicles. If you're noticing the fuse block that's down there, kind of tucked behind the brake, or that's actually the clutch pedal at that point. That was a challenge. We actually had to move that, and here again, you got a lot of people doing a lot of different things on the vehicle at one time, so we eventually had to do a little rewiring and shift that fuse block up under the dash, where it was still accessible, but definitely out of harm's way. And here's a little picture of the group. Once again, great group of people. It's always a lot of fun, and it's always been an honor to go do some of these shows, and that's definitely courtesy of Steve Irby and the marketing department let me go out and do some of this fun stuff. So, too much fun. So we're going to save this vehicle for later. This will be another one. You've actually seen this on the show as well. But we're going to close this down. We're going to go back one file, and we got always do the cool install page. So here's some more pictures. This is just a neat, not really an extravagant install, but just kind of cool. Just a little bit of color, nice gloss finish with, you know, vinyl side panels with that L7. Just a beautiful, simple little install. And guys, once again, feel free to send your pictures in. We'd love to feature them on here. You can also post them on the Kicker Club. If you guys are not members of the Kicker Club, make sure you sign up for that. It is on Facebook, courtesy of our good friend Andy McGill. And don't forget to tune in to Living Loud with Andy. He always does a great show as well, where he'll go in depth on a lot of these other subjects. So stay tuned for Living Loud with Andy, and make sure you sign up to the Kicker Club. Get your pictures posted up there and see a bunch of the other cool installs. Here's another install. You don't have to have expensive equipment. You don't have to do something really elaborate to get a nice, clean, smooth look. I mean, a set of comp C woofers looks great in a finished trunk panel. Just simple, but nice and clean and stylish and very functional. Here's something else that I found that was really kind of cool, and you know, those are not even Kicker speakers, but that is still a cool install. Someone took marine speakers and wired the LEDs on solid and put them in traffic light housing. So just cool little lighting you can do with speakers, and you know, I would probably assume the speakers actually even work. So I would love to hear that. In fact, this has given me ideas to make some of them myself for the back patio. I think it would be a lot of fun. This is a crazy install that I actually saw in Florida probably back about 2005 or 6, back when the SX product was first coming out. I think this was called the Rumblebee. It was originally a 4-door pickup that was converted into a 2-door pickup, and you talk about amplifiers and speakers everywhere. Here's a great shot of the dash. I don't think there are really after, an absolute focus center image on this vehicle, even though it was center drive. It probably sounded really good, but definitely a huge array of RS components in this vehicle. And in the back, the legendary, the Solo X woofers, 6 of the 12s hiding back there in the back of that vehicle. Just what a cool machine. And look at the seat. I mean, it looks like something you'd see coming out of the ocean. Just wonderful vehicle. And there's another shot of the outside of it. You see the grille is actually the Solo X logo, and I actually forgot. I'm not sure if it's in the next picture. There's another picture of the back of it. Something else, just all the little details that were in this vehicle. If you look right here at the steering wheel, it was also the Solo X logo. So the steering wheel was fashioned after that logo. So cool vehicle, cool installs, and like I said, that one is definitely over the top, definitely, very extreme. But it's going to bring us to the fail section, and tonight's fail section is a little bit different than the normal fail section. This is more of a, not so much as a fail as, kind of a fun, have fun. And, if you've ever thought you've had crappy bass response, pun intended, what a great install. I mean, very creative, very unique, but probably pretty functional too. I like it. And of course, I've never thought to make a porcelain subwoofer enclosure, but hey, obviously, if it doesn't resonate, it's going to do just great. So moving right along to another, interesting. Cardboard is probably not the best choice for a really, sound subwoofer enclosure. And it doesn't matter how much duct tape you put on the cardboard, it's probably not going to sound very good. Not to mention, even if that was wood, that would still pretty much be an infinite baffle application. That enclosure is absolutely huge. It's probably 20 cubic feet for those 4 subs there. And I'm still trying to figure out the way the subs are arranged. It looked like they just, randomly punched holes in the amount of the subs. So once again, if this is your install, we're just having fun, not trying to insult anybody. It's just, just being creative and having some fun, and it's for entertainment. And yeah, I'm really wondering if you're going to, obviously not the greatest craftsmanship, but if you're going to build a console for a radio, wouldn't you want to use something better than a stock Delco radio? Just my opinion. And I actually think this was whittled from the looks of it. It looks like, Cousin Jed was out on the back porch with his pocket knife and cutting down a tree and making just crazy stuff. But, it's a lot of fun, right? So... And that's the whole point of this, is we want to have fun and want to have, just something fun to talk about. Just, it's all about entertainment, And that's, hopefully you learned something tonight and got entertained a little bit too and had some fun. We're getting kind of that point where we got one more thing I want to do here, and that's the submitted questions of the week, and then we're going to get right into the giveaway. We're a little bit after 9, but we had such a good show with Chris, I really didn't want to end that. So submitted questions from our consumers out there. Question number 1 said, what would the advantage be of grabbing one side of signal input instead of both left and right input for a monoblock subwoofer amp, if any? Well, it really depends on the music. Most bass is recorded mono in most newer recordings. Not all of it. There's a group that I like to use for demo. They're called Yellow, Y-E-L-L-O. They actually do stereo bass. But, some of the old recordings, when stereo was new, they actually put a different instrument in each speaker. It was really kind of the, hey, we got something new, let's use it to the extreme and make everybody sick of it, kind of that mentality. But as long as you're listening to current music, I'm going to say there's really not a big problem with grabbing just the left or the right channel and monoing them together to go into a subwoofer amplifier. Just realize that depending on the music you're listening to, you may miss some of the bass information, but more than likely you might not even notice it unless you're listening to groups like the Beatles back in the 60s where literally everything was in a different speaker. I don't think you're going to have any problems. So have I done it before? Yes, I will say I've actually had to do this before when grabbing signal from both speakers was just quite a bit of a challenge. And it worked. Do a little bit of listening, do a little testing. So go ahead and try it, and if you're not happy with the response, go ahead and run the other wire to the other side. It's not that big of a deal, and like I say, it's a little bit more work, but not necessarily a whole lot. But if you do it, wiring off both channels, you're not going to miss any of the signal whatsoever. So question number 2. So I installed a Key 200.4, but now I have overbearing chimes. The only interface harness available for my vehicle has built-in DSP feature. Do you guys recommend I stack the DSPs, or what would be the best way to utilize the two parts to get the best output? You know, without knowing what vehicle, it's really hard to say. One of the things that I like about, you know, one of the products that I know personally, not plugging these guys, but, you know, they make a great product, are the Amp Pros, which you can actually adjust the level of chimes, and they don't have the DSP built in. But going to the core of the question, do you recommend stacking the DSPs? And with the Key 200.4, there really isn't a lot of need to do that. It's going to be a lot of extra tuning and maybe a lot of extra work for very minimal gain. So, you know, if you have to use, you know, some type of line output converter that has DSP built into it, and you're using the Key 204, I would probably suggest, you know, whichever of the DSPs does the job for you the best. You know, start with the Key 204. If that doesn't work, maybe shut it off and then go to the DSP setting, which is going to be all manual, of course, on the other DSP. But here again, it's all about what works for you and what's going to, you know, be the easiest for you. Third and final question is, I just bought a CXA 800.1. What is the best way to connect it to my existing stereo? Here again, I don't have all the information necessary to give you 100%, you know, dead fast response. The CXA 800.1, if it's the new version of CXA, will take a 40 volt or 400 watt input right into the RCA. So if you're worried about, you know, signal isolation and dropping the voltage down, that's not going to be an issue with the CXA 801, the latest revision. The early version of that would actually take a 10 volt or 25 watts right into the RCA. But, you know, here again, if you've got a vehicle that, you know, like some of the Chryslers with the Alpine or the Beat system, you're going to need some type of interface with those vehicles, because if you just try to, you know, tap into the output of the factory amplifier, you may not get a full range signal. You're not going to have any control over it. So yeah, here again, it's going to depend on what vehicle you're trying to connect it to and what type of system it is. But most of the time with the CXA amplifiers, you can run your speaker level right into it without any issue whatsoever. And you don't have to run a turn-on lead because it's got that DC offset sensing for the turn-on. So, 9:07, at least by my watch, and it could be slow, it could be fast, I don't know, but let's give something away. I know you guys have been waiting for this, and here again, don't forget to tune in to Living Loud with Andy. Don't forget about that, and don't forget to sign up for the Kicker Club. And send in your pictures, guys. Let's feature them here on the show. So, I'm waiting, Mr. Bill Frog. Let's see who's going to be the third prize winner today. I guess I don't need my glasses. Caleb S. from Texas. You are the third prize winner. That's going to give you the EB400 wireless earbuds. You're going to get the Gray Kicker Unmasked t-shirt and the Kicker koozie. So congratulations on that. Watch for an email from Bill Frog. Make sure you put your shirt size, your phone number, your address, and it has to be an actual address, not a P.O. box. So congratulations, Caleb X from Texas. You and the EB300s, the shirt and the koozie. So second prize is going to be, drum roll please, Brett B. from Saskatchewan, Canada. Hey, thanks for tuning in. And, you know, that just reminds me, we've got a lot of great viewers from all over the world, from Australia, from South Africa, from, you know, Asia, from Europe, Canada, Mexico. So thank you guys for tuning in. And thanks for winning, Brett B. from Saskatchewan. Watch for that email from Bill Frog, and he's going to make sure that you get your prizes, which are going to be obviously the Tabor headphones, the gray t-shirt, and the koozie. Which brings us to, drum roll please, the grand prize winner for tonight is going to be, and that's for the Cush NC headphones, t-shirt, and the koozie, and that's Todd W. from Pennsylvania. So congratulations to all three of our winners. Thank you again to Christopher Pate for, you know, spending so much time with us. And, you know, I really think we've just really opened up the box there for a lot more discussion on speaker placement and tuning and imaging. And what better guy to have on the show than Christopher? I mean, those guys have done some unbelievable work for many, many years. And I can't wait to get to SEMA and actually hear some of their vehicles and see them. So that's one of the joys about going to SEMA, which we'll have our booth at SEMA again the first time. And I think 3 years we're going back to SEMA. So I'm looking forward to it because that is always my favorite show of the year. So guys, once again, make sure you hit the like and subscribe if you liked what you saw tonight. If you have any questions, Feel free at support@kicker.com. If you have any audio questions, we got a great staff on hand to answer those questions. And of course, tune in 2 weeks from now for another Kicker Unmasked. And Living Loud with Andy, he does a lot of questions and answers and a lot of, going back over what we talked about, a little more in-depth conversations. So if this has prompted any great questions, go ahead and tune in with Andy and ask your questions there. There's a lot of great people that tune into that show as well, and they can, get your questions answered for you. And once again, thanks again. We appreciate all your support. Coming up on 50 years with Kicker next year, and we can't do that without your support. So thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in. And, Bill's going to be back there going, he's rambling again. I am. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you in 2 weeks.